So in conclusion, I'd just like to really highlight 6 areas that I think we should focus on as Alaskans to improve our economy so that we do have optimistic things to think about in the future. The number one most important one, I would say, is further develop our natural resources to create more jobs and a larger tax base for our economy to create that stability that we need. This has been the foundation of our economy now for over 100 years, and I think it will continue to be for the next 100 years. So we have to be serious about developing some of these large-scale infrastructure projects and encourage natural resource development to bring new money into our state. At the same time, we have to control our state government spending so that we do save for the times when the oil production declines, if this doesn't happen or the federal stimulus money runs out. So we have to live within our means at the government level just as we have to as individuals. The third topic is one that I just don't feel is talked about nearly enough in the state, and that's transferring more public lands into private ownership. This is really the essence of the American capitalist system, and if you really think about it, if you look at the areas like Fairbanks, the Mat-Su, and Anchorage where there actually is private land, that's where communities have developed, and land tends to move to its highest and best use, and people then can accumulate capital that they can go to a bank like Northrim and borrow against that asset, and that's the number one way that small businesses start in our country. People draw out the equity of the assets that they own, borrow against it, and then have the opportunity to invest in whatever their talents are to start a business, and that creates jobs. But without private ownership of land, that doesn't happen. And that's why we as Alaskans are more beholden to the federal government, because they still own 2/3 of the land. And even at statehood, 50 years ago, we were promised 104 million acres of land, and less than half of that land has been surveyed, patented, and conveyed yet here 50 years later. To me, this is a travesty, and we've really missed out on 50 years of economic development. And I know much of the Native Corporation land that was promised in Angsta is still waiting to be conveyed as well. And some of that is intentional selection issues, but for the most part it's been a slow conveyance process that I don't think is acceptable. So if we can do that, it'll create more of a local tax base. More of the state land is actually required to be the vacant, unappropriated land given to boroughs, and then borough governments can form, and borough governments have an incentive to sell it to the private individual to create a property tax base that pays for services such as our police and fire and education, and we won't be so required to get municipal revenue sharing in some communities in the state.